Good evening, good evening. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome to our last class. Joe just asked me if I've ever fished or if I like fishing. I got one fishing, so I only went fishing once. When I moved to Florida, my boss laid ceramic tile, and he was a big fisherman. I'd go out for redfish, and he said he'd been studying the charts, and you get ready. When I tell you we're ready to go, we're going. And so I show up to work one day. He said, never mind work, today's the day. Jump in the boat. So off we go, and he gets this magic spot. And you could catch, it was like between, I even forget now, but 12 inches and 28 inches or something. Those were the only ones you could keep. But we started fishing, and we quit in an hour because we were sore from pulling them in. I actually counted my boss one time. He threw the line out there, and I started to myself, 1,001, 1,002, 1,003. By 1,009, he already had one. He found some spot where there was a deep recess, and for some reason, he knew they were all just sitting right there. And it was pretty cool, but it was also scary. We pulled the boat up because you can only keep one. It was me, him, and his wife. You can only keep one. So we're pulling the boat up. You know, it takes a little while to get the boat back on the trailer, that kind of thing. And his wife says, I can't stay. I got to go get the kids. We're getting let out of school. So she takes off. We're watching her pull out of the parking lot, and game and wildlife guys pulling in. And there's only two of us in the boat and 3 fish. And we're like, well, I wasn't Christian back then, but if there is a God, don't let us get pulled over. But yeah, that's my only story as far as fishing. But we were quite good at the redfish. I got a better hunting story, though. I don't ever want to shoot a gun again. Up in Lance, remember Tom Michael? Invited me over for a barbecue one day. And, hey, come on, I'll show you how to shoot. So he takes me out there, gonna shoot skeet, and he gives me a double barrel. He says, you never fired a gun? I said, no. Well, fire one off in the woods, get used to it. Phew. Yeah, okay, I'm ready to go now. Go ahead, put her up there. He shoots the skeet up, and I don't even know how, but I obliterated it. He's like, wow. And I said, I'm done. I'm 1 for 1. I'll never shoot another gun. Well, I hope I'll never shoot another gun. But in this world, I don't know. Think about it all the time. Not shooting another gun, just getting one for self-protection. But imagine in this town, I could probably find one, couldn't I? Yeah, we got some defenders around here. I don't know. It's just never came up in my life. Wasn't brought up with guns, and so it's just something I never really thought of until last few years. But Book of Exodus, which we're not teaching, criminal breaks into your house. When can you shoot him, and when can't you? Huh? Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. When do you kill him? Thank you. And when do you not? If it's at night, you can kill him. It's in the daytime. No. That makes sense, doesn't it? At night, you have no idea how deep the threat is or how much danger you're in. Break in at night, take your life into your hands. But in the daytime, when you can see a little bit easier, tell whether your life or whether you're actually being threatened or whether you're just being ripped off. So it makes a difference. But anyways, I'm a big believer that if you want a government position, you got to know a little something about the Old Testament. Yeah, Joe. Say that again.
Law states that you can shoot either way, either or, wherever your life, you fear your life is in danger.
Yeah.
You fret for your life.
Stand your ground? Is that what you call it? Yeah. All right. Sorry to get off track there, but that's Joe's fault. He asked me if I could fish. Chapter, let's look at 17 real quick. We're going to knock out the rest of the book, which obviously is quite the challenge. Your teacher talks too much, but the things that are on the test, I definitely want to go over. chapter 17. A couple of things worthy before we get to what I really want to notice. Chapter 17, verse 1. Shall not sacrifice to the Lord your God a bull or a sheep or any which has any blemish or defect, for that is an abomination to the Lord your God. We all understand the principle behind that by now, I hope. You give God your best. Anybody remember what Malachi was complaining about? Giving them the sick and the lame. Offer it to the governor. Think he would help? Who's governor, by the way? I think it was Nehemiah. But anyways, offered it to the governor. Would he appreciate it? Look at verse 6. Whoever is worthy of death shall be put to death on the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. But he shall not be put to death on the testimony of 1 witness. Comes to a death penalty, we're not taking one guy's word for it. What was Jesus put to death for? Excuse me? Yeah, notice we're all pretty familiar with the death of Jesus, but notice how I ask a simple question like that, nobody can answer it. There's a good reason you can't answer, because the Jews were all over the place. Witnesses couldn't agree, changed their testimony. I love that story in Acts chapter 8, the Ethiopian eunuchs reading Isaiah the prophet. Do you remember what section of chapter 53 he's reading? The phrase that jumps out at me, I forget exactly off the top of my head, but the phrase that jumps out at me, I'd have to look it up. In his humiliation, his justice was taken away from him. If you go back and you read Isaiah, he used the word judgment, which I like justice better because I think justice helps us to appreciate what he's exactly saying. Isaiah envisioning the entire crucifixion, not just the crucifixion, but the entire scene. He says that his justice would be taken away. Well, first of all, the late Ken Franklin was one of my instructors, started Christian school at Bell Shoals. And I'm pointing to you because I'm wondering if those names mean anything to you. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how long ago he died. But anyways, he was my instructor, good man, enjoyed his classes. But one of the things he taught us was how profound that passage is. His justice was taken away. Why did Jesus have 2 trials? 2 trials. Jews couldn't put him to death. They had to have Pilate sign off. All right. Judas runs up and betrays him with a kiss. Jesus said, your hour is upon you and the power of darkness. What did he mean by that? You know what Jesus is pointing out there? You don't arrest somebody at night. In a capital offense, you do not arrest somebody at night. And a Jewish, what day of the week was Jesus crucified on? What day comes after Friday in the Jewish calendar? Yeah. And you don't arrest anybody for a capital case the day before the Sabbath because he has to have a 2-day trial. The fact that Jesus' trial was over in a day should have been the reason why he throw the case up. One of the things I like best, because I know most people don't get it, is when the high priest asked him, "Are you the Son of God?" He said, "I am, and you will see the Son of God coming on the clouds with great power, with power." High priest tore his clothes and said, "What need have we?" What is so horribly wrong with that? Well, that's what he's claiming, but according to Jewish jurisprudence, guess what's horribly wrong with that? You know how a Jewish trial took place? Sanhedrin sat in a semicircle. The defendant's sitting there. When it comes time to vote, guess who votes first? That's a good guess. Yeah, high priest votes last. The last person to join, the person with least seniority. Imagine if you just got put on the Sanhedrin and your first case is Jesus. How are you going to vote? We'll just wait and see what the high priest does. No, that's exactly why the high priest votes last, so that he doesn't put any undue pressure on anybody. The case should have been dismissed right there.
So the tearing of his garment was an influence for.
Well, he also said, what further need have we? Well, it said, and they all condemned him. And in my Bible, not my study Bible, I got a little Bible, I got all highlighted. Because according to the Jewish trial, guess what? All means. That is evidence that you were railroaded. You didn't have anybody that thought you were innocent? You must have been railroaded. Now, the reason why that works better than you might think is because here's where we tend to think of American jurisprudence when we read the Bible. Why wouldn't we? That's what we're brought up with. But who is the defense at a Jewish trial? Who's the prosecutor? There is no prosecutor. It's 2 or 3 witnesses. And what have we already noticed about them? Yeah. One says one thing, one says another. They're making it up as they go along. 2 or 3 witnesses don't stand up. Who's the defense? It's the Sanhedrin. So we're not trying to put somebody to death. We will if the evidence is overwhelming, but we're not trying to put you to death. Here's the high priest, tying, ripping open his robe. What further need have we? Influencing everybody before they've even voted, and no one said he was innocent. All of these factors go into what Isaiah meant when he said, in his humiliation, his justice was taken away. Just about everywhere. And I'll tell you what I laugh at too is, remember when you get in, what is it, Acts 12? Peter's in jail. Why haven't they already killed him? Well, we got to wait for the Passover. It would be against the law. Yeah. But they were waiting until after the Passover, whatever. In other words, the point I'm making is they're real picky and choosy about when they actually follow the law of Moses. Didn't follow too closely with Stephen either, you might have noticed. But anyways, in his humiliation, his justice was taken away. It takes 2 or 3 witnesses before you can put somebody to death. Chapter 17, drop down to verse 14. When you come into the land which the Lord your God is giving you, you possess it and dwell in it, and say, I will set a king over me like all the nations that are around me. Notice once again, Moses is a prophet. 1400 BC, and of course I just use that round off number, but 1400 BC. You got to skip over the book of Judges, Joshua, and the book of Judges, which covers roughly how many years? 400-year period in the book of Joshua. So from the time Moses said this, basically until King Saul, the first king, 400 years passes. Well, who can tell me what's going to happen in America in 2600 BC? I mean AD, not BC. Yeah, nice trick, Moses. He's a prophet. And I love the way Moses prophesies because he's laying down the law while at the same time telling him how you're going to break the law. You don't need a king, but you're going to set one over you anyways. Verse 15, you shall surely set a king over you, whom the Lord your God chooses. One from among your brethren you shall set as king over you. You may not set a foreigner over you who is not your brother. Obviously, I read that passage like it means something to me. I'm teaching Jeremiah to the students tomorrow morning and again Thursday morning. What's one of the reasons Jeremiah was hated? No, by the way, Nebuchadnezzar comes in, destroys everything. I mean, he takes captives, but this raises the city to the ground, takes the king, pokes his eyes, after he kills his sons right in front of him, pokes Zedekiah's eyes off and takes him off into Babylonian captivity. We've all read, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego aren't going to bow down to me. Heat that fire up 7 times hotter than it already is. This guy's got a wrath. Treated Jeremiah kindly. Told Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, treat him kindly. Why? Because read Jeremiah. There's another chapter off the top of my head, I can't remember, but Jeremiah 38 for sure. Jeremiah 38, Jeremiah said, if you submit to the king of Babylon, you'll live. All will be well. I mean, your lives are going to be different because you're going off into Babylonian captivity. He might leave some of you back here to farm the land, but you get to live. Your life will be a prize to you, as Jeremiah says it. But if you resist, trouble's coming. Well, they hated Jeremiah for that message. What was one of the problems in the days of Jesus with the Zealots? What was their complaint? We classify Jews in the first century, like Sadducees, Pharisees, Essenes. They were isolationists. What were the Zealots all about? Yeah, it's kill Rome. What was their problem? Got a foreign king set over us. You don't have foreign kings set over you, and the highest leadership felt that way. Well, here's one of the reasons why right here. That passage. We're not submitting to a foreign king. We submit to a king we choose, one from among our brethren. Pilate, Herod, they're not our brethren. So they resisted that kind of thing. Well, that passage is true in the time Moses wrote it. But by the time of Jeremiah, God was going to discipline the people. And so he gave them a prophet and told them, you need to submit to a foreign king. It is God's will that you submit to a foreign king. And again, in the days of Jesus. Here's another one from Isaiah 53. What does it mean that he's a tender plant or tender root growing out of dry ground? What does that mean? I love the poetry of the Old Testament, the images it creates. A root out of dry ground. You all know the answer. You just don't know how to read the poetry yet. Where did you turn to for truth in the days of Jesus? You didn't. They were dry ground. They were miserable. Look at the way they treated Jesus. If their hearts were in the right place, would Jesus have ever been crucified in the first place? Why would you choose Barabbas over Jesus? Because these guys are a root out of dry ground. One of my favorite statements Jesus made. The Sadducees, who don't believe in angels or the resurrection, try to trip him or trap him with that trick question in Matthew, I think it's 22. What about the man that marries a woman, dies before he has a son, according to the Levites, according to the Levitical law? His brother has to marry her and bring up a child in his name. She marries 7 brothers, all of them die before they have a child. In a resurrection, whose wife is she? What's Jesus' answer to that? You skipped ahead. There's a killer phrase just before that. He's talking to the Sadducees. Those are the people he's eventually going to be on trial in front. And he says, and I quote, you do err, not knowing the scriptures, nor the power of God. This is your leadership. I expect somebody who just got baptized last Thursday to come in and not know the scriptures or to error and not know the power of God, but I don't expect my leaders to talk that way. He's a root out of dry ground. Look at the way they behave. Look at the way they treated. Look at the Jews of the first century. It's one of the reasons the Jewish community was up in arms when Mel Gibson tried to make his movie. Because Mel Gibson wanted to make a real movie, and there aren't too many Jews in that movie. They're going to come across looking very good. Maybe a Nicodemus, or, just like in the real world, there's only a remnant. The masses are pretty ugly. But anyways, don't set a foreign king over. Verse 16, but he shall not multiply horses for himself, nor cause the people to return to Egypt to multiply horses. For the Lord has said to you, you shall not return that way again. Neither shall he multiply wives for himself, lest his heart turn away, nor shall he greatly multiply silver and gold for himself. King Solomon, where are you? Why are you not reading this passage? By the way, what's one of the problems with a great bevy stall of horses? Oh, America, listen up. I love this place, by the way, so don't let anyone think I'm picking on it. Go Air Force. I'll be watching next year every game that's on TV. Go Air Force. But be careful. How does an ancient nation measure their military power? Remember when in Isaiah the Assyrians had the city surrounded? We'll give you the horses. You think you can set anybody on them? That's how they were picking on them. Point being, you measure your military might and things like that. Well, nothing wrong with having proper protection, but where do we really get our protection from? From the Lord. And so I get a little nervous sometimes when, I sense people are trusting a little bit more in military than they are in God. I'm all fine and dandy with a strong military, but God comes first. The battle belongs to the Lord. Let us never forget that. Whose side am I on? I want to be on God's side. That's all I know. Anyways, and another question that comes up, I will answer when we get to chapter 24. Maybe I've answered this before, but if I haven't, I'll answer it in 24. Considering there's the king multiplying wives to himself, that fits both David and Solomon. Considering these kings didn't pay much attention to divorce and remarriage, why is God blessing them in the Old Testament? Say the same thing for Jacob. He had 2 wives. And I'll answer that in chapter 24. But keep that question in mind. There's another big verse, verse 18. And it shall be when he sits on the throne of his kingdom that he shall write for himself a copy of the law, a copy of this law in a book. And I lost my place there. He shall write for himself a copy of the law in a book from the ones before the priests, the Levites. And it shall be with him. And he shall read it all the days of his life, that he may learn to fear the Lord his God, and be careful to observe all the words of this law and these statutes, that his heart may not be lifted up above his brethren, that he may not turn aside from the commandment to the right hand or to the left, that he may prolong his days in the kingdom, he and his children, in the midst of Israel. What if King David himself was sitting next to Katrina in this class, taking this test, taking the last test, because we're taking Deuteronomy. If he had taken a numbers test, I'm afraid he would have failed. Sorry, King David, I'll see you next semester, but you didn't pass Leviticus, or you didn't pass numbers. Why do I say that? 1 Chronicles chapter 13. What's David's plan? We got to get the Ark of the Covenant back into the tabernacle where it belongs. What's he do? Puts it on a new cart. Ahio and Uzzah drive it. And when the cart stumbles and the ark's in danger of falling, Uzzah puts out his hand. Uzzah is struck dead. David's angry. Why is David angry? Talk to anybody who's ever sincere in their religion. If you challenge somebody who's sincere, that is their natural reaction. Why are you in my face? I'm as sincere as you are, Mike. Yes, but you're not doing it according to the word. People get angry about that. David got angry. Why? Because putting the Ark of the Covenant back in the tabernacle is a good thing. Why are we having trouble? But David is also a man after God's own heart, which is why the very next verse says, David was afraid of the Lord. Yeah, maybe, okay. Temper tantrum's over. Sorry, God. Now, the Bible goes into a different story there, but you get to chapter 15 in 1 Chronicles. David gets back on plan. He wants to take the ark again, put it in the tabernacle. And in chapter 15, it says, he gathered up the Levites because I didn't do it the first time and I didn't consult God about the proper order. What book in the Old Testament do we learn that the descendants of Kohath are the ones who handle the ark? Test question. Well, no, you just had the test. Yeah. In the book of Numbers, that's where we learn Kohath. Levi had 3 sons, Grisham, Merari, and Kohath. And of those 3 sons, it is Kohath where the priests come from, and it's also Kohath that handles the Ark of the Covenant. I put that, or not the Ark of the Covenant, but all the furniture, including the Ark of the Covenant. So had David read a copy of the law, that would have never happened. Uzzah would have At least not died on that day, let's put it that way. But anyways, the tragedy when you do not read. And why does God want us to know these stories in the first place? Because that's how serious he is about it when he's given us a command. And one of the problems with the church is trying to wake people up to things they think are just trivial, when in reality, it's not trivial at all. It matters. But anyways, I love that section. There was one more passage that I wanted. Yeah, there it is. I skipped over it. We read verse 1. Go back to verse 2. If there is found among you within any of your gates which the Lord your God has given you, a man or a woman who has been wicked in the sight of the Lord your God and transgressing his covenant, who's gone and served other gods, worship them, either the sun, moon, or any host of heaven, which I have not commanded. And it is told you, and you hear of it, then you shall inquire diligently. And if it is indeed true and certain that such an abomination has been committed in Israel, then you shall bring out to your gates the man or woman who has committed that wicked thing, and shall stone him to death, that the man or woman to death, that man or woman with stones. Whoever is worthy of death shall be put to death on the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. Yeah, I skipped over that. I read all that for one word. Anybody want to guess what word it is? I'll even give you the verse. Verse 4. And while you're looking at verse 4, huh? Gold star goes to Russ. Why does that word jump out of me? Because no elder in his right mind should ever be looking to disfellowship somebody. Relishing it. But if you hear of something that's dead serious, somebody's doing something that's placing their soul in danger, if you hear of it, should you find out about it? Or should you say something like, well, God hadn't made me a detective? Which I heard out of the mouth of an elder. God never made me a detective. What was the elder saying? And by the way, it wasn't me requesting that he go look into a certain situation, but somebody requests that he look into a certain situation, which would have taken him all of 15 minutes to find out whether it was true or false. And the person was his own daughter who was living in a sinful situation. She has since corrected it. I'll give her credit for that. But she was living in a sinful situation. He didn't want to ride over it. Saw his daughter. She came to Wednesday night Bible class. Came to Bible class on Sunday morning. A lot of interaction between father and daughter. Didn't want to ask. You know why he didn't want to ask, right? Because he had to do something about it. And unfortunately, when I was in Palm Harbor, we had a song leader and his wife came in, just kind of people you just show up out of nowhere. Hi, we're members of the Church of Christ, and you'll be seeing our face every day for the rest of your life. Faithful as the day is long. It didn't take long before he was a song leader, and I didn't have any children. Now I have 3, but you could, this guy's on a deacon elder track, that kind of thing. He ends up leaving. You know what he said? Wrote a letter. I'm telling you why I'm leaving. The elder winks at sin. Ouch. Winks at sin. He was using a biblical term, but the elder winks at sin. And it's the same thing. We don't want to inquire in these situations because it's very unpleasant. I don't want to be an elder because you have to do things like this. But I've seen one disfellowship at Alachua before I met you. But the Martin's father, he was one of my first elders. He stood up and I thought he did it exactly how it was supposed to be done. He should have wished they'd have been filming it so you could see how it was done. Broke his heart to have to do it, but one of our members, guy was on the police force, left his wife, was living with another woman. He was confronted. He said, I'm not leaving. And, she's still attending service, so he stood up with deep regret, and only because we want to bring him to repentance. We're forced to do this. And of course, we prayed for him, and I left a few years later. Nothing had ever changed before I left, so I assume it stayed in that situation. But yeah, nobody wants to do that. Of course, you don't want to do that. But that's that necessary work. Sometimes it has to be done. And And it will never be done if you're not willing to look into it. You know, innocent until proven guilty, but I mean, if people are throwing out serious charges, you might want to find out whether they're true or not. It's how you keep the body pure. And don't think people don't notice. People notice that you won't confront sin. They do. They know what we're supposed to do about it. People have an understanding of it. And we're not talking about, you know, sinful situations where you're placing your soul in danger. I don't think sometimes people realize what the purpose of disfellowshipping is. It's not a punitive procedure. By the way, this is part of my book that you told me I better write soon. I got it written here and there. I just got to collate it somehow. One of the things that people hate about 12-step groups is there's no rules. There's a reason why there's no rules. You know why there's no rules? Because if you don't do what we say, alcohol will beat you back into it. You will come back if you live. And maybe we like to say, maybe you'll be tenderized by that point in time. And then suddenly everything we're saying makes sense. And oh, by the way, everything we said that you would do, you went out and did against your own will. We start looking like prophets when the guy gets back. Yeah, okay, maybe now you're ready to listen. In the church, we don't have that luxury. People live sinful lives and they stay in a sinful life, and not all sin turns against you so that the person actually wants help. Sometimes they go off and live in a sinful situation and they have no desire for the rest of their life to leave that. What is the only tool we have to wake them up? Can't force them to come back. We can't take them out of a house. What can we do? We can tell them, I love you. But until you repent, I cannot fellowship with you. I just can't do it. That's why we do it. And if that doesn't wake them up, we don't have anything else. We don't have force of government. We have the ability to persuade with God's will or God's word and what he has said about if you die in your sins, where I go, you cannot come. What is that? Luke 8? Chapter is that? Anybody remember? I should know that. I want to say Luke 8:21. Katrina, as long as you're looking it up. But anyways, yeah, I love this chapter. It's got so many good things in it. I'll wait till Katrina looks it up.
Well, I was going to mention, something not long ago, subject said three reasons why you withdraw fellowship because you love the person enough to save them, not to save themselves. They've already separated in sin from God, so you're not doing anything more than hopefully put in the position that they want to return. Second is the church. You want to save the church has to be pure. It's the bride of Christ. Third is the world. The church is the light of the world. Light spotted with the dirt of the sins of the congregation is not a light at all.
Yeah. And the second one, the song leader that I just told you about, he proved that one. Because what Dave is essentially saying is people sitting in the pews can see you're not addressing.
Well, that's what Paul said to the Corinthian church. You have upped up.
Yeah. Yeah. And even the Gentile world's ashamed to talk about what you're doing. People inside can see it. People outside can see it. That's thank you, Dave, for adding that. Did you have the passage? I said Luke. Yeah, okay. I knew it didn't sound right, and that's why. John 8:21. Thank you. If you die in your sins, where I go, you cannot come. Where'd Jesus go? Hebrews chapter 1. He went to be at the right hand of the Majesty on high. And if you die in your sins, where I go, you cannot come. Chapter 18. Couple of things I want you to notice. Number one, look at verse 9. When you come into the land which the Lord your God has given, You shall learn to follow, you shall not, excuse me, big word, you shall not learn to follow the abominations of those nations. There shall not be found among you anyone who makes his son or his daughter pass through the fire. Everybody knows what that phrase means, right? Child sacrifice. Or one who practices witchcraft or soothsayer, or one who interprets omens or a sorcerer, or one who conjures spells or a medium, or a spiritist, or one who calls up the dead. Now I read that whole list. The only one I really wanted to notice was one who calls up the dead. Who did that? Saul did. King Saul. Remember when he went to the Witch of Endor? Witch of Endor called up, and of course that, by the way, is a kind of a controversial story. Did Samuel really make an appearance? It's one of those issues, I don't care what side of the fence you're on, I'm not going to disfellowship you over it. I take the position that, yeah, it's Samuel. The opposite position would say, God's not going to do something that violates his own law, but I'm not sure I quite look at it that way, even though I respect that opinion. But I think Saul, again, what's the king supposed to do? You're the first king, Saul. Think you might want to write down a copy of this law so you know what you can and can't do? Apparently you don't know you can't see the Witch of Endor. You want to see Saul so much? Or I mean Samuel? I'll show him to you. That's kind of how I think it went down. But anyways, he thought he saw Samuel even if it wasn't Samuel. But anyways, King Saul. One of the reasons why Israel should let God pick their king. Why did Israel pick Saul? He looks presidential. Yeah, his policies are a mess, but he looks good in that suit. People are pretty shallow sometimes when it comes to following politics. What's that? Yeah. I know a question I like to ask sometimes when we're zeroing out on politicians. What is it you like about them? It's amazing how many people they don't. Can you name one policy you like? Just one. And either side, I'm not picking on a side. It's amazing sometimes when it comes to politics how much people are passionate, but I'm not really sure what he did exactly that I was so enthralled with. But anyways, that's one of the frustrations of today's world. But anyways, yes, Saul was guilty of that. Verse 15, Lord your God will raise up from you a prophet like me from your midst. From your brethren, him you shall hear, according to all you desired of the Lord your God in Horeb, in the day of the assembly, saying, let me not hear again the voice of the Lord my God, nor let me see this great fire any more, lest I die. And the Lord said to me, what they have spoken is good. I will raise up for them a prophet like you from among their brethren. He will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak to them all that I command him. Who is that prophet? First century, the Jews weren't really sure if the prophet and the Messiah were the same. And you can see that in some of the New Testament questionings of who Jesus is. But some people thought there was a prophet coming, and it was Elijah, and the Messiah was coming too, but that wasn't necessarily the same person. Before the prophecies were fulfilled, they're hard to see exactly what they're saying, but we have the beauty of 2020 hindsight. The way I look at it is the Old Testament. If you're an Old Testament Jew living any time before the coming of Christ and you're reading the Old Testament prophets, you would probably look at them the same way you and I look at like Revelation 21 and 22. After I read Revelation 21 and 22, I have more questions about heaven, not less. I know I want to go there, but I don't understand that picture. I just can't wait till one day, oh, okay. Because I know God's word's true, and I know I'm going to understand, one day. But right now, some of that imagery is just kind of beyond my ability to absorb. Just tremendous. I think the wall's 218 feet high. Why are the gates open? Who left the gates open? We built a wall 218 feet high, and you went away and left the gate open? What's wrong with you? You realize those two ideas don't go together, right? Not in this realm, but they go perfectly together spiritually. Doesn't everybody want to live where you don't have to lock your door? Yeah. Feel safe. You live in a community where you don't have to lock the door, you feel safe. What's another picture of safety? And nobody getting over that wall. We're safe behind here. So what doesn't go together in this world fits together very nicely. 12 foundations, 12 gates. How many apostles? There's 13. How many patriarchs? Don't say 12. There's 13. Who got left out? And what's my point? My point is it's symbolism. And it's the kind of symbolism I don't completely understand yet, but I look at it the same way the prophets probably looked at what we understand now. Anyways, some of the stuff is hard to understand, and the Jews struggled to realize that this prophet is also the Messiah, and he is like Jesus. Jesus is like Moses. He's prophet and he's king. Moses wasn't priest, but he was prophet and king, and Moses was over the high priest. So Moses had Moses had a unique position in the Old Testament. Who are the only two people that came with a law? Moses and Jesus. Moses came down from Mount Horeb with the law. Now, it's not his law, it's God's law. That's one of the reasons the Hebrew writer said Jesus is superior to Moses. We heard from the prophets, but in these last days, we heard from the Son. Big difference there. But Moses came with the Old Testament law, delivered Israel from the bondage of sin. Jesus came with his own law and I said from the bondage of sin. I should have said from the bondage of slavery. Moses led Israel. Jesus leads us from the bondage of sin. So anyways, that passage definitely wants you to remember. Chapter 19 starts off with the cities of refuge. How many cities of refuge were there? 6. It's supposed to be 9. If you read that chapter, I was double checking with McGarvey. For some reason, they don't make 3 more cities of refuge, but there's 6 cities of refuge. Everybody knows what a city of refuge is for, right? You accidentally kill somebody, you go there before the avenger of blood comes to kill you. If the trial finds you innocent, you get to live in the city of refuge until when? Death of the high priest, then you can go home. And the avenger can't avenge. But if you leave the city, avenger has opportunity. You've disobeyed the law. So in essence, it's a potential death penalty. Of course, if the avenger of blood's not there, you might get away with it. But you take your life into your own hands with that. Once again, the law of witnesses, chapter 19, verse 15. One witness shall not arise against a man concerning any iniquity or any sin that he commits by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, the matter shall be established. If a false witness rises against any man to testify against him of wrongdoing, then both men in the controversy shall stand before the Lord. For the priests, the judges who serve in those days, and the judge shall make diligent, there's that word again, inquiry. And indeed, if the witness is a false witness who has testified falsely against his brother, and I got this verse highlighted, then you shall do to him as he thought to have done to his brother. So you shall put away the evil person from among you. And those who remain shall hear and fear, and hereafter they shall not again commit such evil among you. Your eye shall not pity, but life be for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. But of course, your eye shall not pity. Once again, there are times when we have to do that kind of thing. We do not relish it, but we also don't shirk away from it because it's so difficult. I love verse 19, though. Then you shall do to him as he thought to have done to his brother. thinking about getting rid of it, but I haven't yet. But Netflix has a lot of good. One of Netflix's behind the scenes agendas is they do not like America's justice system. And there's a lot to be said against America's justice system. Program after program on that, if you haven't noticed, of innocent men who are in jail for years and years and years, and then they find out they're innocent. You know, went to jail on trumped up charges, whatever, you know, along comes DNA and we find out we got the wrong guy. He's been in jail for 36 years. One of the things that comes across real clear when you start looking into that line of American jurisprudence, one of the things that becomes real clear is, anybody know what the Brady Law is? Brady Law? In discovery, you come across evidence, if you're a prosecutor, come across evidence that helps the defense, you're obligated to give it to them. You don't do that, it's a mistrial. I don't even know, we might as well just hold a ceremony where we burn the Brady Law on the Capitol House building because nobody follows it. And no one's ever held responsible when we find it. This guy sat in jail for 36 years. You know, it's my first question when I hear, this guy sat in jail for 36 years and he's innocent? Who put him in jail? Who was the prosecutor? Why don't you walk me through this? Because I want to know if any of that happened. And if it did happen, hey, what do you know? A cell just opened up. And I think that's one of the problems in America. Somehow, nobody's ever held responsible for that kind of thing. You don't just trump up charges on people, and when we find out the charges fall apart, you just walk away from it like you haven't done anything. It's outrageous. Outrageous, some of the things people do in that line. Man, you're obligated by law to turn it over. There's a reason why we call it criminal justice in America. You ever think about that? Why do we call it criminal justice? Because we came from England. Criminals didn't have any justice. Innocent until proven guilty. Is he guilty beyond a reasonable doubt? But if you manufactured or withheld any evidence, I don't know how people sleep at night knowing they're withholding evidence and there's a guy sitting in jail that will be there. Maybe he gets executed. Like the one show I was watching, the guy was in jail. I'll even name it. You guys need to see it. Who's the author? John Grisham. John Grisham is one of the Innocent Man. The Innocent Man. Watch it. John Grisham's interviewed, and it's got a few episodes to it, I believe. I haven't seen it in a long time. But John Grisham's interviewed at the beginning of it. He said, and I forget the exact number he said, but I've written 40 novels in my career and only one true story. And it's this one. And the reason I wrote a true story is because if I had made this fiction, you wouldn't believe it. And then they open up the series. These two guys are being interviewed. And the one guy's saying, yeah, I stabbed her, and I stabbed her, and I stabbed her, and I stabbed her. And the other guy's saying, yeah, we moved her body over to this house. And these guys, I mean, the confession is just undeniable. And when the case started falling apart, they sent it to, I forget the name of the organization that looks into people who are innocent and yet behind bars. And, you know, there's so many cases they have to pick and choose. And they said, we got this case and we plugged in the video of the police interview and we said, why would we look into this case? These guys are guilty of sin. But as you start looking at the evidence, nothing makes any sense. It is amazing how many people in this country confess to crimes they did not actually commit. You wouldn't think anybody would do that, but believe it or not, people do it. But anyways, yeah, it's a fascinating.
And there's a whole psychology.
Yeah.
I watched the show the other day on psychology with regard to innocent confessions of guilt.
Yeah.
Dealing with why people confess guilt when they're not innocent. We have laws to protect against that. Like the Brady Law is always supposed to support the innocents. Unfortunately, we have people who abuse it because they're in a position of power. basically want to achieve their own goal.
John Grisham in that movie said one of the things that's hard to get your mind around is, you know what prosecutors are in the business of doing, don't you? Winning cases. You don't go to the playoffs if your record's 3-10. You got to win cases, and people get in the way, unfortunately. That's the world that we live in. But anyways, it's a fascinating show.
For that, they don't take some cases.
Yeah. My wife, she just moved out of that department. She works for a lawyer in Savannah. She's been on TV. I was a prophet. When she first got that job, we started seeing their commercials on TV, and I said, beautiful as you are, you'll be on that commercial in inside a year. It only took 6 months, and she's making a commercial. Actually, I might have I don't have my phone with me. I got it on my phone. It's not that big a deal, but it's kind of a big deal for us. But anyways, she just moved out of the department. That's what they do all day long. That's a loser. We might be able to do something with that, but yeah. We're not taking a case if we don't think we can win it. Yeah, Joe?
Sometimes you're criminal too, though. Even though you make them innocent or guilty, and that's what they said, they can be coerced as well.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that show. There's another one too, The Making of a Murderer is another good one. I still can't figure out why Stephen Avery has not been released. And that is the prosecutor I really want. If to make the point I started off with based on Deuteronomy 19, as much as Dave and I enjoyed the one that's called The Innocent Man, that John Grisham wrote a book about, the other one that, there's more than two, but the other really big one is called Making of a Murderer. It's actually got 2 parts to it. But again, you watch this one and you're like, man, why is that prosecutor able to retire and go live on the beach somewhere? That guy should be in jail, or Stephen Avery. It's amazing. Yeah, Jeff.
As I said, I'm not advocating that police go around doing that, but I'm 25 years, I haven't seen that. But it's very, not too long. There are those that hit bad complex.
I think one of the things America, or not America, but human beings sometimes struggle is that wherever there's power, people will gravitate towards it that only are there for the power. And police is, it's a good place to, hey, I'm the law. And for, some bad seeds, that's a pretty heady place to be. You got to be a humble person to handle authority. Whether it's in the Lord's church or whether it's in our society, but with that kind of responsibility. But no matter what the, no matter what the area of life is, if there's money to be made or power to be accumulated, the wrong people are going to go into it. It's one of the reasons politicians are so hollow, for the most part. Yeah, but. I know what you mean. And every now and then you see that where somebody is like, they've made the deal so sweet that I'll go ahead and suffer my reputation just so I can be free. That's a horrible choice to have to make. You want to be free for the rest of your life? Everybody think you're a murderer, or you want to go to jail while you profess your innocence? Pray I'm never put in that position. But anyways, just so long as we opened up this can, I've got a very intelligent niece. She got a doctorate, and she's so smart, so much smarter than I am. She told me what she got her doctorate in, and I'm like, oh, okay. I have no. She told me what it was, and 15 minutes later, after she described it, I'm like, oh, okay. I don't know what she's got a doctorate in. I was sitting right there when she was explaining it, and I have no idea what she got a doctorate in. Something about the way human beings receive information. I mean,
Sherry, she was also the Innocent Project.
Innocent Project? Yeah, that's where Thank you. Who said that?
Sherry.
Appreciate that. Yeah, the Innocence Project. What was I saying? Yeah, she's an anti-death penalty. And one day her and I are, it was an instant message on Facebook. We were kind of batting it back and forth. It was good natured, no problem. But I told her I was for the death penalty, and I quoted Genesis chapter 9:6, and I'll give her credit. You know what she said in response? She said, I didn't quote Genesis 9:6. That's funny because God didn't use it on Cain. I'm like, ouch. Hey, can somebody help me over here? I'm losing. No, actually, but it did make me think, and here's my answer. A couple of things I would have you notice. Yeah, and if you read between Genesis chapter 4 to Genesis chapter 9, when God did not use the death penalty on Cain, ask yourself this question. Did the world get better or did the world get worse? There was a guy named Lamech who's bragging about his sin compared to Cain. The world got worse. But here's the other one that I think is a pretty good question. If you've got an answer, you can knock me down, but I think it's a pretty good question, or a pretty good observation, I should say. Is God all-knowing? Yeah. One of the chief reasons people oppose the death penalty is because of what we're talking about here, innocent people that actually get executed. Is God all-knowing? Of course, the answer is yes. Well, then he knew that we were going to abuse the death penalty right from the get-go. But he gave it to us anyways. So it seems to me that if God, knowing the weakness of man and that unfortunately innocent people will be executed, God knew that. And it's not something he learned after it happened. He knew that. He gave us some death penalty anyways. And I think one of the reasons why it breaks down so much is exactly what we're talking about. You shouldn't bring a case, you should never get away with a bogus case. One more story and then we'll move on. Not story, but one more observation and we'll move on. You know what bugs me about the story that displays Solomon's wisdom? The two harlots, one baby's dead, one baby's alive. Whose is it? Solomon's. Great story. But you know what bothers me about that story? What's that? It never tells us what happened to that woman. What happened to the woman who was lying? You ever stop and think about what she's willing to do? She wants the other woman to spend the rest of her life with her neighbors thinking she's a liar. She wants to raise her son. Hey, hey, my boy just graduated today. No, it's my boy. What are you talking about? You imagine the torture she's willing to put that other mother through? What happened to that woman? She just get to go riding off into the sunset, walk out of courtroom, lost that one. What happened to her? I'd like to know. That's one of those farther along we'll know all about. Hey, Solomon, I got a question for you. What's that? Yeah, that's true. But farther along, we'll know all about it. I got questions for these guys when I get up there.
I agree, knowing that it might be used or would be used, but definitely not.
Yeah, and I don't think that you have to be pro-death penalty, period. I think you can be on either side of the issue. That's for the government to figure out. I don't have to be one way or the other. All I have to do is be an obedient citizen. Now, if I'm living in a state that has the death penalty and I'm so fired up against it that I want to try to do something about it, well, that's what activism is all about. Go out and get you a coalition together and take it to the state capitol, which is what in Georgia? I should probably know that by now. Is that Atlanta? Yes. Okay. I used to know my capitals. Pierre, South Dakota. I don't even know the book of Deuteronomy, much less capital. But be that as it may. Put a coalition together, go change the law. And vice versa. It works vice versa as well. But you don't have to be for or against it. But the one thing I would say in the New Testament is, I think it's Acts 25, verse 7. The Apostle Paul, while he's defending himself, said, if I've done anything worthy of death, I'm not afraid to die. If ever there's a time to oppose the death penalty, that would have been a good time. He didn't do it. But of course, Paul recognized, just go be with Jesus. For me to live is gain, or is Christ, to die is gain. Yeah. So anyways, chapter 20. A few exemptions from having to go into battle. Let's notice that. When you go out, chapter 20, verse 1, when you go out to battle against your enemies, see horses and chariots and people more numerous than you, do not be afraid of them, for the Lord your God is with you, who brought you up from the land of Egypt. And why you just he throws that phrase in there a lot. What's God bragging? Man, you know what I did in Egypt. Why would you be afraid? So it shall be when you are on the verge of battle, the priest shall approach and speak to the people, and he shall say to them, Hear, O Israel, today you are on the verge of battle with your enemies. Do not let your heart faint. Do not be afraid. Do not tremble or be terrified because of them. For the Lord your God is he who goes with you to fight against your enemies to save you. Then the officers shall speak to the people, saying, What man is there who has built a new house and is not dedicated? Let him go to return to his house, lest he die in the battle, and another man dedicated. There's one. And what man is there who has planted a vineyard and has not eaten it? Let him also go and return to his house, lest he die in battle, and another man eat of it. There's two. And what man is there who's betrothed to a woman and has not yet married her? Let him go return to his house, lest he die in the battle, and another man marry her. Then the officers shall speak further to the people and say, What man is there who is fearful and faint-hearted? Let him go and return to his house, lest the heart of his brethren faint like his heart. So anyways, there's your 4 exemptions to going into battle. I believe those are on the test. I particularly like the betrothed one. Made a widow out of her before she even got to actually be married. A pretty sad state. Go home, be with your wife. But anyways, let's keep reading. Verse 10. When you go to a city to fight against it, then proclaim and offer of peace to it. And it shall be, if they accept your offer of peace, then you shall, excuse me, I got a crease in my Bible right there. It shall be that if they accept your offer of peace and open to you, then all the people who are found in it shall be placed under tribute to you and serve you. Now, if the city will not make peace with you, but would make war against you, then you shall besiege it. And when the Lord your God delivers it into your hand, you shall strike every male in it with the edge of the sword. But the women, the little ones, the livestock, and all that is in your city, all the spoil, you shall plunder for yourself, and you shall eat the enemy's plunder, which the Lord your God is giving to you. Thus you shall do to all the cities which are very far from you. I've got that highlighted. Which are not of the cities of these nations, but of the cities of these peoples, which the Lord your God gives you as an inheritance. You shall let nothing that breathes remain alive, but you shall utterly destroy them, the Hittite, the Amorite, the Canaanite, the Perizzite, the Hivite, the Jebusite, just as the Lord your God has commanded you. Lest they teach you to do according to all their abominations, which they have done for their gods, and you sin against the Lord your God. So anyways, notice there's a difference in the way you approach cities that are far away from you as opposed to the 7 cities of Canaan. 7 cities of Canaan was a cancer that needed to be removed. And God chose Israel to do it.
Ways and we want to make peace with you and make peace.
I know enough of what you just said to remember the story, but I'm not sure what that is. It's been a while. Anyways, I know what story you're talking about. It rings a bell, but I couldn't even begin to tell you where to look for it. It may come back to me, but I doubt it. I also like what God advises at the end of the chapter here. Verse 19, when you besiege a city for a long time while making war against it, to take it, you shall not destroy its trees by wielding an axe against them. If you eat of them, do not cut them down to use in the siege. For the tree of the field is a man's food. Only the trees which you know are not trees for food you may destroy and cut down to build siege works against the city that makes war with you until it is subdued. Makes sense, don't it? What was one of the things that brought on the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70? Not in the Old Testament, but AD 70. Jews had food stored up for a long time, but that kept them from wanting to fight. Guess what some people figured out? Yeah, if we burn up all the food supply, you might be willing to fight then. And they hastened their own destruction by doing it. Should have been able to survive a lot longer than they did when the Roman army came around. I don't think it would have saved them because I don't think the Roman army would have left, but they certainly hastened their own destruction by doing it. Didn't King Saul make a foolish vow too, not to eat?
Yeah. So,
Captured David or something? I don't remember what it was, but yeah, he made a foolish vow, same thing. Or was it Jonathan?
I was thinking of one where the daughter came out of the house. First one I could see.
That's Jephthah. Jephthah, the judge, said he would offer as a sacrifice the first thing he saw coming out of his house. Apparently, he thought he would have some animals running his way when he got to the home, and whichever one he saw first, he would sacrifice. Who's he see? His daughter. And hence that debate we've been having ever since Jephthah. We learned about Jephthah. Did he really offer his daughter as a sacrifice? Interesting question. We'll leave that one right there. Let's see, chapter 21, verses 1 through 9. Interesting thing about this is the law of unknown murder. Find a dead body laying in the field. No one knows who killed it. Who's responsible for it? Very good, Russ. The nearest city. You did a measurement. Whoever city it is, I said it, he or she, whoever the dead person is, whatever city is closest to it, it becomes their responsibility. Verse 3, it shall be that the elders of the city nearest to the slain man take a heifer which has not been worked and which has not pulled with a yoke. Why is that important? There you go. Every time you see phraseology like that, I think the thing to be remembered is the animal has not been used in profane work or secular work to help man out. He's pure in that sense. So we're going to give him right back to God. And the elders of that city shall bring the heifer down to the valley with flowing water, which is neither plowed nor sown, and they shall break the heifer's neck there in the valley. And that surprises me because there's no blood shed for that. But anyways, then the priests, the sons of Levi, shall come near, for the Lord your God has chosen them to minister to him and to bless him, in the name of the Lord by their word, every controversy and every assault shall be settled. And all the elders of that city nearest to the slain man shall wash their hands over the heifer whose neck was broken in the valley. Then they shall answer and say, our hands have not shed this blood, nor have our eyes seen it. Provide atonement, O Lord, for your people Israel, whom you have redeemed, and do not lay innocent blood to the charge of your people Israel. An atonement shall be provided on their behalf for the blood. So you shall put away the guilt of the innocent blood from among you when you do what is right in the sight of the Lord. Now, of course, the reason I wanted you to remember that passage is not complicated. What did Hebrews chapter 11, what did God say Abel's blood was doing? His blood is crying out from the land. No one else saw it, but God saw it. And the land is polluted. The blood is crying out. There must be justice. Even if we don't know, or you don't know who did it, there must be atonement for that. All right, we will start or pick it up in verse 16 when we get back from break. We only got, let's make a short break till 7:30. We'll be back at 7:30.
Whereas men are That joke doesn't work in all parts of the country. That's what it's saying. All right, chapter 21. We left up the law of marriage. Over 10 through 17. I'm not going to really talk much about that. We'll run out of time. But Moses gives them more instruction about. Is that Mike on? Marriage. What's that? Is that Mike on? Probably not.
Sorry about that. Yeah. Chapter 21, verse 18. Test question coming in this section here, but I'll tell you what it is. If a man is a stubborn and rebellious son who will not obey the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, and who, when they have chastened him, will not heed them, and his father and his mother shall take hold of him, bring him out to the elders of his city, to the gate of the city, and they shall say to the elders of the city, this son of ours is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey our voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard. Then all the men of his city shall stone him to death with stones, so that you shall put away this evil person from among you. And all Israel shall hear and fear. That should put the fear of God in you, to have to execute your own son that way. And of course, I particularly wanted to read that with the way I hear some people talk to their parents. I shudder sometimes the way I hear people talk to their parents. But anyways, that's not what's on your test. I just wanted to read that because, again, one of the things I love about the Old Testament, who gave us this law? God. What's so interesting about the Old Testament to me? God gave a law to a nation. The New Testament is different and unique because he's basically talking to the church, which is planted in all nations, and it's a spiritual institution. But in the Old Testament, here's God giving a law to living, breathing, physical Jews. And so it seems to me that might be some principles we want to hang on to, and that's one of them. Some kids, the way they treat their parents, I don't think they should be taking them out and stoning them, but I wouldn't mind setting them down and reading this chapter to them. No, I'll tell you that. Verse 22, here's what's on your test. If a man has committed a sin worthy of death, and he is put to death, and you hang him on a tree, his body shall not remain overnight on the tree, but you shall surely bury him that day, so that you do not defile the land which the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance. For he is hanged on who is hanged is accursed of God. Anybody got a reference to Galatians 3:13 next to that passage? You got it, Joe? Well, then I'm almost there. Let me do it. Christ has redeemed us from the curse of the law, having become a curse for us. For it is written, cursed is everyone who hangs on a tree. Well, of course, Paul's explaining what we understand and don't even think twice about these days. Christ was sinless, and the curse for sin was placed upon him. We all understand that, right? He was wounded for our transgressions. By his stripes, we are healed. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, here's what's on your test. When Paul said that we preach Christ crucified, to the Jew, a stumbling block, to the Greek, foolishness. Why was it foolishness to the Greek? I don't think you have to know much about Greek mythology to realize that, wait a minute, your God came in the flesh, you killed him? You can kill your God? Why would we want to worship a God you can kill? What sense does that make? It wasn't in keeping with the way they viewed gods, that he would sacrifice himself for our sins. People don't understand love that deep. But But that's the kind of love God has. But why is it a stumbling block to the Jew? Which is more important. That's what's on your test.
Hanging on the tree.
Cursed is anyone that's hung on a tree. There he is, hung on a tree. He must be cursed. Our curse that was laid upon him. Jude primarily, by and large, did not understand that. You and I understand that. We've understood it for so long, we don't think twice about it. But in the first century, that was a problem that had to be worked through. Yeah, you're right. He was hung on a tree, and cursed is anyone that was hung on a tree. You quoted the passage right. Good for you. However, let's look at Isaiah 53, as I just said. He was wounded for our transgressions. By his stripes we are healed. And Galatians 3:13 quotes the verse and applies it to Christ. So you don't have to guess. But anyways, that will be on your test. Excuse me. Let's see, what do we got here? Yeah.
David's son, hair got caught in the tree. He was hanging in the tree.
Uh-huh.
Would that make him a Christian?
I had never thought of it that way, but yeah, I guess you could say it. Yeah, absolutely. Hey, by the way, the question we were all stumbling on, Russ had the answer during break.
Joshua chapter 9, the Gibeonites.
Gibeonites came rolling in after they saw Joshua and said they were from a far country and tried to make peace. Yeah, they could see the handwriting on the wall, I believe. Yeah, thank you, Russ. I would have never come up with that. I had forgotten all about that. I had forgotten what book it was in, to be honest with you. 22:5. A woman shall not wear anything that pertains to a man, nor shall a man put on a woman's garment. For all who do so are an abomination to the Lord your God. Well, there's my Facebook post for tomorrow. See how many friends I lose? I read that. Obviously, you know why I read that. Because this blending of the sexes that's going on in America is quite disturbing on a number of levels. But men and women are different. They're supposed to be different. Not going to say much more about it other than, yeah, God recognizes the wickedness of blending the sexes together. More about the law of marriage from verse 13. Actually, through the rest of the chapter, let's read a couple of things here. Drop down to verse 22. If a man is found lying with a woman married to a husband, then both of them shall die, both the man that lay with the woman and the woman. So you shall put away the evil person from Israel. Obviously, what's the penalty for adultery? Didn't they find the woman in John chapter 8 in the very act? What's missing? Where's the guy? Caught him in the very act. But anyways, yeah, that is a death penalty. I saw somebody post, speaking of Facebook, I saw somebody posted the other day. It's not a new thought, but it's a good one. Is God-given sex, is that between a man and a woman? No. Thank you. Husband and wife. And I know I'm not picking on you, and it's okay. And I know you know what we're saying, but in this world, it is important. Yeah. No. The only thing I'm trying to point out is that it has become so casualized in today's world that we say it without thinking, well, that's not technically true. Yeah, I say it every now and then too, but no, that's not true. It's for a husband and a wife. That's what it's for. A male husband and a female wife. Thank you very much. Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing, I will add, well, actually, let's wait till 24. But yeah, death penalty for adultery. Verse 23, if a young woman who is a virgin and is betrothed to a husband, and a man finds her in the city and lies with her, then you shall bring them both out to the gate of the city, and you shall stone them to death with stones, the young woman, because she did not cry out in the city, and the man because he humbled his neighbor's wife. So you shall put away that evil person from among you. So responsibility for a woman to make sure her disagreement with this situation is, she has an obligation. And I'm sure you guys know, but what's the difference between a betrothal and an engagement? Yeah, it's legal. They just haven't come together. When a Jewish man betrothed a Jewish woman, he still lived at home. She still lived at her home, but it was legal. They hadn't come together yet. When it's time to come together, he takes his wedding party over. That's part of the imagery that Jesus is using with the foolish virgins. Wedding party comes to the bride's house, they party, and then he takes her back, usually build a house or a room on the parents' house and live there. But the only point I'm trying to make with this is that's legal. In America, when you get engaged, you can walk away from it and there's nothing legal to it. You just go your separate ways. Not so with a betrothal. While the couple does not live together yet, have not consummated the marriage yet, it is still legal, which is why Joseph wanted to put Mary away secretly, not realizing, obviously if she's pregnant, Joseph figures he knows how she got pregnant, and they are betrothed. So, not being a just man, he could have insisted on the law of Moses, but he didn't. He wanted to put her away secretly, which is why he had to have an angel revealed to him. Don't worry about it, Joseph. You can take her. But anyways, betrothal is as good as adultery because she's a married woman. Verse 25. But if a man finds a betrothed woman in the countryside, and the man forces her to lie with her, then only the man who lay with her shall die. But you shall do nothing to the young woman. There is in the young woman no sin worthy of death, for just as when a man rises against his neighbor and kills him, even so in this matter. For he found her in the countryside, and the betrothed young woman cried out, but there was no one to save her. If the man finds a young woman who is a virgin, who is not betrothed, and he seizes her and lies with her, and they are found out, then the man who lay with her shall give to the young woman's father 50 shekels of silver, and she shall be his wife, because he has humbled her. He shall not be permitted to divorce her all his days. So you better take it seriously. You cannot wait. Verse 30, man shall not take his father's wife, nor uncover his father's bed. And I wrote 1 Corinthians 5 next to that verse. Anybody remember why I would write 1 Corinthians 5 next to that verse? Man had his father's wife. Obviously, the way Paul worded that, it didn't sound like it was his mother, but it was certainly the bride of his father. You don't do that kind of thing. Chapter 23 goes into some things about who is accepted into the congregation. I'm not going to make any test questions, I don't believe, out of it. One thing I will notice, look at verse 12, 23:12. Also, you shall have a place outside the camp where you may go out, and you shall have an implement among your equipment, and when you sit down outside, you shall dig with it and turn and cover your refuse. Why did I point that out? Jews were cleaner than most of their neighbors. But if you asked a Jew why they were so clean, what would the answer be? Well, their answer would be, though, because God told us to. Why are you covering your refuse? God told us to. That's not scientific. It's just being obedient to God, which turns out to be scientifically beneficial. I remember when I was in school one time, a story caught my attention. Matt Lauer was on the Today Show. Where in the world is Matt Lauer? Anybody remember that? Week every year, Matt Lauer would wake up in a different city everywhere in the world. And then, of course, they'd build the program around whatever cities. And, well, you know, it's on as I'm headed out the door, 8:15. I'm out the door to go to school. And it was on. And as I'm getting ready to leave, I hear he's standing in front of the Taj Mahal. And he tells the story. They had health problems in Taj, in the Ganges River that runs next to the Taj Mahal in India. You know why they were having such health problems? They use it for a bathroom. But also, guess what else they use it for? This is what got my attention. There's an ancient legend that if you wash in the Ganges, your sins will be washed away. Well, I wonder where that came from. But that's the kind of thing that, you know, reminds me with the Samaritans. Remember, when the northern kingdom split from the southern kingdom, the northern kingdom implemented the golden calves in Bethel and Dan. They never gave that up. Along comes Assyria in 720 and takes them away into captivity and brings other people into the land. Well, what do you think those people actually knew about the real God? You know, the Samaritans, by the time of Jesus, ended up believing in the law of Moses, but that was it. But the point I'm making is you add time to a situation and you will hear feints of truth and a whole lot of error. Somehow, India, the legend has survived that if you bathe in the Ganges River, your sins will be washed away. Well, you and I know how that happened. One of the apostles was standing on the banks of the Ganges River and saying, "He that believes and is baptized shall be saved." And somehow they forgot that's where it came from, but they knew that you bathed in the Ganges River. But even in 93, 94, 1993, 94, the people in India don't know not to pee in the river? Are you kidding me? Jews have known that since 1400 BC. They were covering there. It's just amazing that the world we live in sometimes. But anyways, the Jew didn't necessarily know that he was being cleanly. He was being obedient. Verse 21, chapter 23, when you make a vow to the Lord your God, you shall not delay to pay it, for the Lord your God will surely require it of you, and it would be a sin to you. Solomon adds in the book of Ecclesiastes, better to vow, or better to not vow than to vow and not pay. All right, chapter 24. When a man takes a wife, marries her, and it happens that she finds no favor in his eyes, because he has found some uncleanness in her, and he writes her a certificate of divorce, puts it in her hand, and sends it out of her house. Let's stop right there for a minute. What is an uncleanness in her? What do you suppose that means? It means anything you want it to mean when you want to get out of a marriage. That's what it means. You know enough about human nature. Guess what you had in the Jewish community? You had your conservative Jews who would think that only adultery is a reason to walk away. And then you had your liberal-minded rabbis who said, does she have bad breath? And I use that because I forget where I read it now, but that was exactly one of the reasons they used. You can put her away for just about anything. And so the field, that interpretation of that passage to the Jewish rabbis was wide open. Kind of means anything you want it to mean. In fact, I put a question mark in the margin of my Bible right next to it. Verse 2, when she has departed from his house and goes and becomes another man's wife, if the latter husband detests her and writes her a certificate of divorce, puts it in her hand and sends her out of his house, or if the latter husband dies who took her to be his wife, then the former husband who divorced her must not take her back to be his wife after she has been defiled. For that is an abomination before the Lord, and you shall not bring sin on the land, which the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance. Now, we ultimately know, and I hope most of you know, that God kind of treats Israel the same way we treat a child. You do not talk to a 5-year-old the same way you talk to a 15-year-old, same way you talk to an adult child that you have. There's a growing stage. As parents, you recognize what they can and can't handle and what is appropriate for their age and what's not appropriate for their age. You make those decisions all the time. We always know that, what did Jesus say when he was challenged in Matthew 19 about this verse, this passage right here? But I didn't ask that question very well, Russ, because you're absolutely right. And I'm going to use the hardness of heart in a minute. But he said, have you not read he who made them in the beginning? Made them male and female. Now, what's Jesus doing? He's calling us back to the garden. What is he saying? He's saying from the get-go, this is what God always thought marriage should be. But because of the hardness of your heart, he's made some allowances. But knowing that even though God has made some allowances because of the hardness of your heart, knowing that ultimately we're going to end the marriage discussion, if you will, with Jesus. He's treating Israel like a child. Why do you think, if you let her go, she's not coming back? Why do you think that's the law? Because even though it's not, the original plan, notice how God is setting in mind. Most of the time people get divorces because they're highly emotional. And of course, their emotions are all negative. Well, when you get away from a situation and you start reminiscing, you start, well, they weren't that bad. Hey, actually, I kind of liked them. And I kind of liked my life better before they left. Maybe I made a bad choice. So even though this is an allowance, God is still planting within their brains the idea that you better think long and hard before you let her go, because she's not coming back. That ain't happening. So we know that this is a deviation from what Jesus would ultimately teach us. But the other thing I love about that discussion is when the Pharisees jumped Jesus, this is the passage they're talking about. And Jesus immediately responds with, now stop and think about that for a minute. That's a pretty, if you're a Jew, Jewish leader, that's a pretty good thing to do right there. What are they doing? They're pitting Jesus against Moses. Go ahead, Jesus, say something against Moses. What does Jesus do? He says, have you not read he who made them in the beginning, made them male and female? Well, he quotes Genesis. Well, who wrote Genesis? You're not pitting Jesus against Moses. You're pitting Moses against Moses. He wrote both books. And of course, what we're noticing is Moses wrote Genesis. Long before the law of Moses, Adam and Eve, when God created marriage, that was the original plan. But you have become so hard-hearted because of the hardness of your hearts, God permitted you to divorce. But from the beginning, it was not so. This was always God's plan. And so to get back to, that intimacy is not for a man and a woman. It's for a husband and wife. And the way I like to say it is that is God's wedding present. And what a wonderful wedding present it is. And particularly what a wonderful wedding present it is if you handle it the way God would have you to handle it. There was something else I wanted to say too. What was it? Oh yeah, that's the other thing too. Yeah, and one of the things that make you want to quit being a preacher quicker than anything is somebody that comes up to you that wants to divorce their partner, but it's not for adultery. But by the time they're done telling you what they don't like about them, it's like, yeah, I kind of understand. I wouldn't want to live like that either. But he hadn't committed adultery. What does that tell us? One of the things it tells me, maybe it doesn't tell you this, but it tells me this. There are a lot of miserable situations you might find yourself in, and God says, no, you should hang in there. Unless they do that. If they do that, you walk away. You can start over. I will separate the two of you. No, he drinks all the time. Yeah, but he hadn't committed adultery, has he? I mean, there are a lot of miserable situations people find themselves in, but God's only given one reason for divorce. That should show you how horrible adultery is from the perspective of the innocent party. You know, nothing will break your heart faster. What do you think people commit suicide for? Ain't because the Cowboys lost the Super Bowl. It's because the wife left. Anybody that knows that pain understands. You don't have to put up with that. Unfaithfulness is the only reason that you can walk away. And here's the other thing I'd like to say too about the subject. Well, there's a couple things. Number one of the things that's horrible about marriage counseling a lot of times is that you can tell one, if not both of them, they already know what they're going to do. They made their mind up a long time ago. Real hard to counsel anybody that doesn't have an open mind. But imagine if you took divorce off the table. That's not an option. What two options you got left? Go on to the bitter end. Whining to anybody to listen to you about how horrible your life is. Or you can work it out. And let's not forget, there must have been a reason you asked her. Why did you ask her again? And you said yes. Why'd you do that? Because there's something about that other person I love. If you take divorce off the table, you might be able to find it again. But you will never find it again as long as you're entertaining divorce. Because when you're miserable, everybody looks more attractive than the person that you're married to. But if you take divorce off the table, that's not happening. I've only got two choices. I can either be miserable or I can do something about it. It's the only two choices I got left. And who really wants to be miserable? And you might find two people who are really working on their marriage that are reasonable. Not everybody's reasonable, I realize that. Two reasonable people working on their marriage. Faith in God. You can turn it around. There's the love is there. You wouldn't have gotten married in the first place. Obviously, the love is there. To answer the question about, and I think it's a good question, by the way, that's why I think it's worthy of an answer. I'm not even sure I'm giving a good answer, but at least I answer it. Considering God's teaching on divorce and remarriage in the Old Testament, why is God blessing Jacob and David and Solomon? You're not paying much attention to the law of Moses when it comes to marriage, yet God continues to bless. You know what my answer is? Same kind of thing. There's a process. God is working with Israel as he works with a child. I like to say it this way. Israel is the girl that grew up to be the bride of Christ. In the Old Testament, Israel is a young girl. In the New Testament, she's a mature bride of Christ. Same girl, just developed. But when you read the life of Jacob, we know he had 12 sons. How many women produced those 12 sons? You got 4. Leah produced the first 2. Rachel, who's barren, got so mad she gave Jacob her handmaiden. What's her name? I always get them confused. Bilhah and Zilpah. I can't remember who's who, but we'll go with Bilhah. You're probably right. Gives her Bilhah. She produces 2 children for Jacob. Leah stops producing for some reason. Here's Zilpah. Comes the next 2 kids. And then finally, Rachel has a child of her own, who is Joseph, and then Benjamin. Rachel dies while giving birth to Benjamin. But here's the point. Anybody remember the names of those kids? Rachel's first 4 kids? I'm not going to look it up because we're running out of time, but all 4 of them point to the fact that she's miserable. She's miserable because she knows Jacob loves Rachel. He doesn't love her. And here's my point. Yeah, Jacob's got 2 wives. Anybody want to walk through that household? Watch out for the eggshells. Tension everywhere you look. Anybody read the book of Proverbs? Like a continual dripping on a rainy day, so is a house shared with a contentious woman. Better to dwell in the corner of the housetop been in a home with a contentious woman. How many times did he say that? He says it 4. Why do you think he said it? You ever try to mentally picture Solomon writing the Proverbs? Off in his study on his throne, got candles burning, get the mood set just right, writing Proverbs. All of a sudden, door springs open. Here comes wife 204. What about my son? He should be on the throne. Did you see what wife 607 did last night? You got 700 wives. You're not making 700 wives happy. It doesn't work that way. And of course, David, his life was a mess. You can tell David's children needed some more fathering than they got. That was pretty obvious when you read the story of David. So my whole point is, yeah, God did continue to bless him. And yes, Jacob I wouldn't even put in that category because he got tricked. I would stick with David and Solomon particularly. But yes, they violated God's Deuteronomy 17. They violated that. And God continued to bless them. But by the time you're done reading their lives, you should know why you don't want multiple wives. It should become obvious that that is just not the way it should be. One wife, a good woman, the 2 become one. They stay together for their entire lives. What do you know? Children come out. This is what, you know what? I hate this world we live in sometimes. Yeah, I realize that it isn't true across the board, but man, kid comes out of the bedroom in the morning, I'll see mom and dad. It's kind of nice to see mom and dad. Kind of nice on Thanksgiving, mom and dad, we sit at the same table. Now I have to eat dinner with mom at 12 o'clock and dad at 4 o'clock. I eat dinner with mom and dad. It's the way it should be. I realize that, acts of God, so to speak, that doesn't always work out that way. People do a good job raising children by themselves. I'm not saying it can't happen or doesn't happen, but that's the way it should be. One man, one woman for life, raising their own children. I used to listen to a radio program, and I thought the woman was insane the first time I said it. You know how she introduced herself as she came back from commercial break? She said, "I am my mother's children." And I'm like, well, of course you are. But the longer I got to listen to her, the more I realized what she was saying. Yeah, in this world of children, mixed marriages, people get married all the time, live in a household with stepchildren. She's reminding you that all the children that are in my house, I produce them. And that was the point she was making. The nuclear family, the bedrock of a society. One man, one woman living together for life, who, by the way, act like they like each other. I think that's kind of important, too, if you're a kid. Isn't it kind of nice watching mom and dad act like they like each other and hang out together? Yeah. Need more of that. But anyways, yes, Jesus, of course, takes us back to the garden, but this story right here should help us to realize that God is still working with Israel as a child with a hard heart. And by the way, why when Jesus said the hardness of your heart, because of the hardness of your heart that God allowed it. What do you mean by that exactly?
They're not willing to accept God's way, they want their way.
If God had stuck with the original plan, what would Israel, the men, have done? 2 things. Number 1, what did Solomon say? I forget which chapter in Proverbs. Drink water from your own cistern. And if you didn't realize, he's not talking about water there. Drink water from your own cistern. Why should you have streams of water running in the streets? Some about illegitimate children. Drink water from let your wife's breast satisfy you at all times. But drink water from your own cistern. Don't have children running in the street. If Israel had been held to the original plan, what do you think would have happened in the streets? You would have had water running in the streets. Illegitimate people everywhere. I'm not getting married, but I'll produce a child. And the other thing I think you might have had is, okay, now I'm married and I've decided I hate her, but I can't get a divorce. Guess what I can do? I can't put a pillow over her head in the middle of the night. Hardness of heart. Jews were hard. And that's what Jesus or God recognized. And so he brought them forward slowly. But because of the hardness of your heart, we couldn't stick with the original plan. We had to give you some allowances, if you will. I like verse 19 of chapter 24. Oh, by the way, I skipped or didn't read verse 5. Verse 5, when a man has taken a new wife, he shall not go out to war or be charged with any business. He shall be free at home 1 year and bring happiness to his wife, whom he has taken. I love that passage. You're exempt from military duty for a year, go home or go to your house and build a home. Get a good solid foundation. It takes time. But anyways, you guys move in together. You should get some time to get to know each other and build a solid foundation. Love that verse. Verse 7, if a man is found kidnapping any of his brethren of the children of Israel and mistreats him or sells him, then that kidnapper shall die, and you shall put away the evil person from among you. Besides the fact that, what's the sentence for kidnapping? Looks like death to me. But you know what else jumps out at me when I think of that? The whole tribe of Israel, except for Jacob and Joseph, should have been executed. Verse 19, when you reap the harvest in your field and forget a sheaf in the field, you shall not go back to get it. Why not? Waste not wanting it. The poor. Let the poor have it. Chapter 25, verse 3. 40 blows he may give him and no more, lest he should exceed this and beat him with many blows above these, and your brother be humiliated in your sight. Somebody's done something, the judge determines he should be beaten. Why did the Jews, or Paul say in 2 Corinthians, how many times did he receive 40 blows minus 1? Yeah, I was going to say 5, but I'd have to look it up to be sure. But I think 5 times. 5 times he received 40 blows minus 1. The Jews used to hit him. I believe it had 3 prongs on it. And when they would hit you one time with that 3 prongs, they would consider that 3. But anyways, why did they stop at 39? Exactly. Make sure you don't go past 40 by stopping at 39. But anyways, yeah, yep. 3 times 13 is 39, I believe. So you'd hit him 13 times. Verse 4, you shall not muzzle an ox while it treads out the grain. Of course, Paul uses that passage to make what point in the New Testament? First Timothy chapter 5, an elder who's worthy of a double honor, he should be paid for his services. Why? Because you shall not muzzle the ox while it treads out the grain. Then he also adds a worker's worthy of his wages, which is a quote from Luke, which tells us that Paul sorry, I lost my train of thought. I was looking at something on my Bible. What was I saying?
Oh, worthy of hire.
Yeah, Paul is quoting Luke, and the reason why that's significant is because Paul is treating Luke's writings like they're scripture. And so if you wonder why we call Luke inspired of God, well, one reason is because Paul thought he was inspired of God. He quotes him like it's scripture. But anyways, look at verse 11. If 2 men fight together, 25:11. 2 men fight together, and the wife of one draws near to rescue her husband from the hand of one attacking him and puts out her hand to seize him by the genitals, then you shall cut off her hand. Your eye shall not pity her. Of course, I read that just simply because that shows you what a serious crime that is. You might want to protect your husband, but you better be careful. That's worthy of having your hand cut off. Chapter 26 is all about the law of tithing. I'm not going to ask you any questions about that, but the basic principle of the law of tithing is what you guys already do, which is we contribute our funds for the work of the Lord, which includes paying workers and buying, purchasing things and doing things, spending money that is useful for the health of the kingdom and also for the spread of the gospel to add to the kingdom. But anyways, the Levites, how did they survive? They had no inheritance. They weren't farmers. They survived on the other Jews, honoring the law of tithing. In chapter 27, start reading in verse 1. Then Moses with the elders of all Israel commanded the people, saying, keep all the commandments which I command you this day, and it shall be on this day when you cross over the Jordan, the land which the Lord your God is giving you, that you shall set up for yourself large stones and whitewash them with lime. You shall write on them all the words of this law when you have crossed over, that you may enter the land of the Lord your God is giving you, a land flowing with milk and honey, just as the Lord your God, the God of your fathers, has promised you. Therefore it shall be, when you have crossed over the Jordan, that on Mount Ebal you shall set up these stones which I command you today, and you shall whitewash them with lime. There you shall build an altar to the Lord your God, an altar of stones. You shall not use any iron tool on them. You shall build with whole stones the altar of the Lord your God. Offer burnt offerings on it to the Lord your God. You shall offer peace offerings. Eat there and rejoice before the Lord your God. And you shall write very plainly on the stones all the words of this law. I'm not sure exactly what form that took, but obviously there's a living memorial that we honor the law of Moses. And then Moses, verse 9, and the priests, the Levites, spoke to all Israel, saying, take heed, listen, O Israel, this day you've become the people of the Lord your God. Therefore, obey the voice of the Lord your God, observe his commandments, his statutes, which I command you today. And Moses commanded the people the same day, saying, these shall stand on Mount Garrison to bless the people when you have crossed over the Jordan, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Joseph, Benjamin. And these shall stand on Mount Ebal to curse. Reuben, Gad, Asher, Zebulun, Dan, Naphtali. Now, stop right there. Test question, but we really covered it last week. You weren't here last week, Katrina, but I'll quickly refresh you. Back in chapter 11, we noticed that the Jews, same story here, 6 tribes on Mount Garrison, 6 tribes on Mount Ebal. The Samaritans, by the time we get to the days of Jesus, the Samaritan religion has been so perverted that all they have is the law of Moses. They do not consider anything after the law of Moses to be inspired. And if all you have to go on is the law of Moses, where are you supposed to put God's house? You really don't know. You can put it wherever you want, and Garrison was the place they put it. So when you get to John chapter 4, and Jesus and the woman, Samaritan woman at the well, are debating which mountain, she's talking about Mount Garrison, even though John 4 doesn't tell you that. We know it because he mentions the well, Jacob's well at Sychar. So we know the area he's talking about. And we also know, historically speaking, that Samaritans had a temple on Mount Garrison. And they had all kinds of legends about Mount Garrison. But that's what happens when you don't have all of God's word, is you are deficient. I heard a guy say one time, Sermon on the Mount's all you need. Live your life by the Sermon on the Mount, you'll be fine. Well, this guy wasn't trying to be sneaky. He was a legitimate guy. I just don't think he was thinking very hard. He wasn't thinking about a lot of things when he said it, but he was trying to be sincere. But general principles, if you live by the Matthew 5, 6, and 7, it'll take you a long ways. But where in Matthew 5, 6, and 7 do you learn baptisms for the remission of sins? Where in Matthew 5, 6, and 7 do you learn we come together on the first day of the week to worship in spirit and truth and take the Lord's Supper to honor the sacrifice of Jesus? You don't. So you obviously need more than the law of Moses, or than the Sermon on the Mount. We'd all still be in our sins if that's all we have. And so obviously, what David say in Psalm? Now I got to get ready for Psalms, so I'll start quoting Psalms, David. What did David say in Psalm 139? How precious is your word, O Lord. How great is the sum of them. Put it all together. So that's the test question. Mount Garrison. Why did the Samaritans have their temple on Mount Garrison? Because of that passage right there. And that special mountain. The blessings were shouted from Mount Garrison. And if you don't have the history books where David made Jerusalem the capital city and Solomon built the temple and God's Shekinah of glory came over the Ark of the Covenant, if that's not part of your inspired literature, where do you put the temple? And so they chose Mount Garrison. And of course, what did Jesus say? You worship what you do not know. So obviously there's more to it. Now he ends the chapter by telling them how many things will curse them. We'll skip over that. Chapter 28, verses 1 through 14. Let's read verse 1 through 2 through 3, just to get the feel of it. Now it shall come to pass, if you diligently obey the voice of the Lord your God, to observe carefully all his commandments, which I command you today, the Lord your God will set you on high above all the nations of the earth. And all these blessings shall come upon you and overtake you, because you obey the voice of the Lord your God. Blessed shall you be in the city, and blessed shall you be in the country. If we had more time, we'd finish it. It's wonderful reading, but God is going to bless them every way you can be blessed. But drop down to verse 15. But it shall come to pass, if you do not obey the voice of the Lord your God, to observe carefully all his commandments and his statutes, which I command you today, and all these curses will come upon you and overtake you. Cursed shall you be in the city, and cursed shall you be in the country. And again, all the many ways they will be cursed are articulated. But one of the things I want you to remember about Moses, he's a prophet. And so at the same time he's laying down the law, he is also foreseeing the fact that they won't obey it. And here's what's going to happen if you don't. Look at verse 36. The Lord will bring you and the king whom you set over you to a nation which neither you nor your fathers have known. And there you shall serve other gods, wood and stone. Isn't that exactly what happened in Babylon? One of the things I like to do when I read this, I've highlighted just about every one. I probably have missed one or two because they're hard to spot every time. But look at, now, one of the arguments, 1948, the Jews became an official state recognized by the world in Israel. When they went back to the Promised Land, they are officially recognized as a state. What is Israel's argument for occupying the Holy Lands, as we like to say? What's their argument? God gave it to us. When it comes to Israel and Hamas fighting, I find myself always on Israel's side because they fight honorably and they're a nation, and they don't seem like Hamas to be trying to kill civilians. Civilians sometimes get killed, unfortunately, but Hamas targets civilians. They hide in apartments with civilians around them, using them as shields. I hate that. But just about the time I start sympathizing with Israel, I have to ask myself, Israel, why do you think you deserve that piece of land? Well, because God gave it to us. And my answer is, yeah, he did, but I've read the book of Deuteronomy. And his giving it to you was always based on conditions. And if you don't follow the conditions, what did he say? Look at how many times you see phrases like this. I'm going to just kind of peruse the chapter. Notice a few things. Look at verse 45. Moreover, all these curses shall come upon you, pursue you, and overtake you until you are destroyed. Verse 46. And they shall be upon you for a sign and a wonder, and on your descendants forever. Look at verse 47, actually. Let's keep reading. because you did not serve the Lord your God with joy and gladness of heart for the abundance of all things. Therefore you shall serve your enemies, whom the Lord will send against you in hunger and thirst and nakedness and in need of all things. And I have this phrase highlighted. And he will put a yoke of iron on your neck until he has destroyed you. Anybody know what's going on in in Jeremiah 28? It's a test question for my students. Jeremiah 28, guess what Jeremiah is doing? And why do I have my hands like this? Nope. That's basically the position you're in when they put a yoke on you. Jeremiah's walking around town in a yoke. What's he trying to say to people? You're going to be yoked in the king of Babylon. In Jeremiah 28, a guy named Hananiah comes along and breaks the yokes off of Jeremiah. It's a symbol that we're coming home in 2 years. Jeremiah's next message is, you've broken yokes of wood, but God has made yokes of iron. And I think of that when I read this passage right here. He will put a yoke of iron on your neck until he has destroyed you. Look at verse 53. You shall eat the fruit of your own body, the flesh of your sons and your daughters, whom the Lord your God has given you in the siege and desperate straits in which your enemies shall distress you. The man among you who is sensitive and very refined will be hostile towards his brother, towards his wife, the wife of his bosom, and towards the rest of his children whom he leaves behind, so that he will not give any of them the flesh of his children whom he will eat, because he has nothing left in the siege and desperate straits in which the enemy shall distress you at your gates. The tender and delicate woman among you who would not venture to set the sole of her foot on the ground because of her delicateness and sensitivity will refuse the husband of her bosom, and to her son and to her daughter, her placenta which comes up from between her feet and her children whom she bears, for she will eat them secretly for lack of all things in the siege and desperate straits in which your enemy shall distress you at your gates. If you do not carefully observe all the words of the law that are written in this book, that you may fear the Lord, fear this glorious and awesome name, the Lord your God. And I cannot believe it, but nowhere in that little section do I have a reference to Lamentations chapter 4, and I believe verse 10. Does anybody know what Lamentations 4? And I see Katrina's about to write it down, so I'm going to make sure I get the exact passage for you, Katrina. Luke 4, I want to say 10, but let me look it up before I give it to you. Anybody know what's going on in Lamentations 4:10? Yep. Yeah, it is. Lamentations 4, verse 10. The hands of the compassionate women have cooked their own children. That became food for them in the destruction of the daughter of my people. That's 586 BC. Moses is writing in 1400 BC. 800 years later, basically, they lived to do exactly what Moses is warning them not to do. And actually, I didn't do it, but you can do it on your own time because we're so out of time. But notice how many times in that run there it says, until you are destroyed. I don't know how the Jew could ignore that. You haven't lived up to the law of Moses. And it was always conditional. Chapter 29, your memory verse. Anybody want to know what your memory verse is? 29:29. The secret things belong to the Lord your God, our God, but those things which are revealed belong to us and to our children forever, that we may do all the words of this law. What restoration hero, based on passages like this, said we speak where the Bible speaks and we're silent where the Bible is silent? No one knows that one? Thomas Campbell, not Alexander, his father Thomas. By the way, in case you didn't know this, do you know where he was standing when he first, and he probably said it before, you know how preachers are, but when it first became his saying, so to speak, you know where he was at? He was at a guy named Abraham Alder's barnyard. Now, you know why that gets my attention? They had church buildings. Why is he in a barnyard? Because the Baptists and the Presbyterian church said, get out of here. You're going to continue to preach what's in the Bible. We got no need for you. So what's he out doing? He's preaching to anybody that'll listen to him. A guy named Abraham Alders opens up his barn to him, and that's where he said it. Anyways, chapter 31. I was going to read it, but it's 8:28, so I won't. Drop down to verse 19. Therefore, write down this song for yourselves and teach it to your children. Chapter 31, verse 19. Teach it to your children, to the children of Israel. Put it in their mouths, that this song may be a witness for me against the children of Israel. When I brought them into the land flowing with milk and honey, of which I swore to their fathers, and they have eaten and filled themselves and grown fat, I've got that highlighted. Then they will turn to other gods and serve them, and they will provoke me and break my covenant. Then it shall be, when the many evils and troubles have come upon them, that this song will testify against them as a witness. For it will not be forgotten in the mouths of their descendants. For I know the inclinations of their behavior today, even before I brought them into the land which I swore to give their fathers. Therefore Moses wrote this song the same day, and he taught it to the children of Israel. Then he inaugurated Joshua, the son of Nun. Drop down to verse 26. Take this book of the law and put it beside the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, that it may be there as a witness against you. Verse 29. For I know after my death you will become utterly corrupt. What's in chapter 32? Which we'll skip over. Song of Moses. Why do you suppose Moses was commanded to teach him this song? Because songs are catchy. You know, every one of us got favorite songs out of the songbook. Sing them, they remind you of old times. It just happened last Sunday. We got a brethren down in Palm Harbor. I keep falling in love with him over and over and over and over again. Anybody know that song? Well, it's in our songbook, and people sing it better than I just did. But anyways, got a song later. You know, guy lives in Cleveland now, but the minute we sung that song, Nick looked at me, Stephen West. Takes you right back to the time and place. That's what music does. Here's God teaching them the song of Moses to remind them when they become utterly corrupt that I told you all this. Obviously, we're not going to go over the Song of Moses because of the time, but Song of Moses was taught to them to remind them that Moses said, you are going to grow fat when you get into the land and become lethargic. Chapter 33 is a real simple chapter. We won't read, obviously, again because of the time, but Moses is an old man. He's about ready to die. What's he do? He blesses all 12 tribes. And so he begins in chapter 33, verse 6. Let Reuben live and not die, nor let his men be few. Verse 7, then he said of Judah, hear, Lord, the voice of Judah, and bring him to his people. Let his hands be sufficient for him, and may you be a help against his enemies. Not anything profoundly prophetic there, but still, blessings for all the tribes. Levi comes next. And then that brings us to chapter 34. Moses went up from the plains of Moab to Mount Nebo, to the top of the mount of Pisgah, which is across from Jericho, as the Lord showed him, all the land of Gilead as far as Dan, all Naphtali, and the land of Ephraim as far as Manasseh, all the land of Judah as far as the western sea, the south, and the plain of the valley of Jericho, the city of palm trees, as far as Zoar. Then the Lord said to him, this is the land of which I swore to give Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, I will give it you to see it with your eyes, but you shall not cross over there. So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab. According to the word of the Lord, he buried him in the valley of the land of Moab, opposite Beth Peor. But no one knows his grave to this day. I've got Jude 9 in the margin of my Bible there. What's Jude 9 say? Michael the Archangel and the devil contended over the body of Moses. What do we suppose that argument was all about? My guess is Satan, if he had his way, would have turned Moses' grave into a shrine. And God was not going to let that happen, because that's exactly what they would have done. Exhibit A is, remember the bronze serpent that Moses made that saved Israel when the serpents were biting him? You fast forward to the days of King Hezekiah, and one of the things he does in the Reformation is destroy that. Are you kidding me? You're destroying the bronze serpent that Moses himself made? And the answer is, yeah, you would think we'd be able to keep it, but guess what? Israel is the reason we can't have nice things. So he destroyed it. He would have done the same thing with Moses' grave. Verse 7, Moses was 120 years old when he died. His eyes were not dim, nor his natural vigor abated. And the children of Israel wept for Moses in the plains of Moab 30 days. So the days of weeping and mourning for Moses ended. Now Joshua, the son of Nun, was full of the spirit of wisdom, for Moses had laid his hands on him. So the children of Israel heeded him, as the Lord had commanded. But since then, there has not arisen in Israel a prophet like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face. And all the signs and wonders which the Lord sent him to do in the land of Egypt before Pharaoh, before all his servants, and in his land, and by all that mighty power and all the great terror in which Moses performed in the sight of all Israel. So you obviously know where we at. Verse 1, Mount Nebo. Where's Moses dying? Mount Nebo. Where's he buried? I don't know, but it's on Mount Nebo somewhere. Yep. Who took over for him? Joshua. Guys, I think I'm going to give you a break and let you have an open book test, since we kind of sprinted to the finish there. But I think we covered everything that in class that will be on the test. Have you actually sent them the test yet? Okay, so those of you online already have the test. I sent you tests this afternoon before I left. Well, you got me doubting myself now, but I thought I did. I do have a hard copy. That's good news. So if you didn't get a test, something broke down. I apologize if it turns out it was me, but I thought I sent one. But anyways, I do have the test in my hands, and I don't think there's anything. It's been a long time since we were in chapter 1. Anybody remember the breakdown of how I said the book breaks down? Moses, remember, the first thing he does is look backwards. Here's where we came from. Second thing he does is look inward. Here's the law where you need to live by. And then chapter 28, where we were just at a few minutes ago, he's looking forward when you go into the land. And so look back, retrospective. He looks inward, introspective. He looks forward, prospective, because he's a prophet. Yeah, I don't think you're going to have any problems with this. I'll leave this copy. I was going to give it to you, but I might need to leave it to Dave if we don't have it. Brethren, thank you for 5 extra minutes of time. It's been an honor. I'm not sure how useful I was, but I'm sure I had a lot of fun. So thank you for inviting me. It's been a wonderful time. May I also remind you that we only studied 3/5 of the Law of Moses. Jean Brigette, one of the profound things he said to me one time was, it's a really good Bible study for some people. Best Bible study you can have with some people? Table of contents. You'd be amazed at the unchurched, how much they can learn from the table of contents. Genesis chapter 12. Get out of your country, from your kindred, from your father's house to a land I will show you. Bless you, make your name great. Bless those who bless you, I'll curse those who curse you, and in you, Jesus, in you, all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. That's where it starts. Abraham's the father of the Jewish people. By the time you get to the end of Genesis, Israel is one family. Jacob and his 12 sons and their family. You get to the book of Exodus, Israel is now a nation, and God calls them out by a mighty hand. Book of Leviticus, God just told us in the book of Exodus how to build the tabernacle. Hey, Levites, huddle up. This is how you're supposed to worship. The book of Numbers, here's why that generation didn't make it into the promised land. Chapters 13 and 14, because they didn't believe God that they could actually take the land. And then, of course, the book of Deuteronomy, Moses is an old man. Israel is now 2.5, 3 million people, second generation, poised to take the promised land. And in the book of Joshua, that's exactly what they do. So thank you so much for allowing me to do this. It's been a great honor. I will miss Tuesdays. This has become a real treat for me. So I appreciate all of you and you online, even though I didn't get to meet some of you in the flesh. Maybe I will in August, but I'll be back. I think it's August 3rd. Daniel has asked me to be on your lectureship. So let's go ahead and go to God with a word of prayer and we'll be dismissed. Lord God.